The holiday lights glinted off every surface of the Sterling estate. Crystal chandeliers reflected gold against marble floors, and a 12-foot Christmas tree stood in the grand hall, draped in white ribbon and glass ornaments. Music played from a live quartet in the corner. Elegant, cheerful, far too loud. Sophie Hart stood at the edge of the room, her blonde hair loosely tied back, her hands folded in front of her dark uniform dress. It was her first day as the new nanny. She had been briefed only hours earlier. Observe, be discreet, do not get involved in anything during the party. The instructions were clear, but her eyes kept drifting toward the corner window. There, barely visible in the chaos of sequins, laughter, and champagne glasses, sat a small girl in a blue velvet dress. Her legs were folded beneath her, her back to the wall hands, turning a music box in slow, measured circles. Nobody looked her way. Not the servers, not the guests, not even the house staff who bustled past her. Lily Sterling, 5 years old, nonverbal autism daughter of the host, Ethan Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Architectures. Sophie took a breath, stepping away from the bar where she had been instructed to stand by just in case. She moved carefully through the room, weaving between conversations about market shares and new product launches, her attention fixed on the child by the window. When she reached Lily, she crouched down slowly. "Hi there," she said softly, careful not to startle. Lily did not respond. Her eyes were fixed on the turning handle of the music box. "I'm Sophie," she continued. "I just started today. May I sit with you?" Still nothing, but the little girl didn't move away either. Sophie sat beside her on the floor, mirroring her posture, letting silence settle around them. The music swelled in the background, violins chasing flutes in a dizzying medley. Lily flinched. Sophie noticed. "Too loud?" she asked gently, then shook her head, remembering Lily might not answer. Instead, she watched the girl's hands, delicate fingers, moving in rhythm with the box's turn. As the song transitioned into a waltz, Sophie shifted slightly. She extended her hand. "Dance with me." Lily didn't speak. Her eyes flicked up briefly, catching Sophie's before darting away. Her fingers stopped moving. For a moment, it seemed nothing would happen. Then Lily placed her tiny hand into Sophie's. Sophie rose slowly, guiding Lily to her feet. The girl wobbled unsure, but did not pull away. With the music box now cradled under one arm, she let Sophie lead her into a gentle sway, back and forth. No steps, just motion. They moved near the edge of the gathering unnoticed at first. Sophie kept her steps light, her face soft with encouragement. Lily didn't smile, but she followed the motion. 1, 2, 1, 2. Someone glanced over, then another. The quartet continued playing, but the conversation began to fade, replaced by a subtle hush. Guests turned to look. Even the waitstaff paused mid-service. At the top of the marble staircase, Ethan Sterling stood still. A tumbler of whiskey dangled loosely from his fingers. His tailored suit caught the light, but his expression was unreadable, frozen, breathless. His gaze was locked on the pair below, his daughter dancing. It had been 3 years since he'd seen her respond to anyone outside of therapy. Since she had taken a stranger's hand, since she had looked almost content, he gripped the glass tighter, swallowing the lump in his throat. Around him, murmurs rippled. "Is that his daughter?" I didn't think she could, but Sophie didn't notice. She was too focused on Lily, matching her movements, watching her eyes for discomfort, adjusting with care. Lily began to turn, slightly mimicking a twirl, clutching the music box to her chest. Sophie matched her again. One soft spin, too. Then Lily stopped, pressing close to Sophie's side, her hand still holding on. Sophie knelt once more, smoothing a strand of hair behind Lily's ear. "You did so good," she whispered. Ethan exhaled. For a brief second, something shifted in him. Not as a CEO, not as the man everyone admired or feared, but as a father. He had no words, just awe, and maybe for the first time in a long while, hope. Sophie sat at the edge of the kitchen island the next morning, her hands wrapped around a warm mug of tea waiting for the inevitable conversation that would end her very short employment. She had broken a clear rule. She had approached Lily Sterling, touched her, encouraged her to dance. The housekeeper had warned her before the party, do not try to connect. Do not step over boundaries. Do not interfere. But instead of a dismissal, it was Ethan Sterling himself who entered the kitchen. He looked the same as the night before. Immaculate suit emotion hidden under sharp lines and silence. But there was something different in his eyes. Curiosity, maybe. A question unsaid. Miss Hart? He began, his voice low and steady. I want to ask you something about last night. Sophie stood prepared to defend herself. I am sorry if I crossed any lines. I just thought you didn't. Ethan interrupted. She froze. I just want to understand. He continued, stepping closer, his gaze focused. What did you do to make her respond? Sophie blinked. I didn't do anything to make her. I just noticed her. Ethan said nothing. His expression was unreadable, but he didn't look away. I sat beside her, Sophie explained. More gently matched her posture, waited. I didn't expect anything. I offered her a hand. That's all. She took it, Ethan said, as if he were still trying to convince himself it had happened. She danced for a little while. Sophie nodded. She did. Ethan crossed his arms, leaning against the counter. His tone grew more distant. We've had every specialist behavioral therapist, occupational speech, endless tests, programs, charts. Nothing like that ever happened before. Maybe, Sophie said carefully. They were trying to fix the wrong thing. Ethan looked at her sharply. Excuse me? I just mean. She continued, not backing down. Maybe Lily isn't broken. Maybe the world around her is just too loud, too fast, too bright. Maybe she doesn't need to be changed. Maybe she needs the world to meet her where she is. He said nothing, but his jaw flexed slightly. I know how that sounds, she added. But what if instead of trying to pull her into our world, we adjust ours to fit hers? Ethan straightened. That's not what I was taught. No, Sophie agreed. Because most parenting books and CEO handbooks are written for typical systems, not this one. He let out a slow breath and looked down at the marble floor, silent. Later that day, Lily wandered into the den while Sophie was folding laundry. The little girl didn't speak, but her eyes followed Sophie's hands as she made shadow shapes on the wall with the sun streaming through the windows. A butterfly, a bunny lily, sat down beside her. Then she smiled. That evening, when Ethan returned from a meeting, he found Lily sitting on the floor next to Sophie, their fingers tangled in a quiet game of copycat. Sophie moved her hand. Lily mirrored it. Sophie clapped softly. Lily followed. Ethan watched from the doorway, without a word. That night, Lily fell asleep faster than usual. She didn't need the weighted blanket, didn't pace the floor. The next morning, Ethan found Sophie in the foyer. I want to offer you the position long term, he said. Sophie hesitated. Her contract was temporary. She had another family waiting in Connecticut for January. I appreciate it, she said, but a hand slipped into hers. Small, warm Lily. She looked up at Sophie with wide eyes, then opened her mouth. Her voice was barely a whisper, almost air. Stay. Ethan's breath caught. Sophie looked down at the tiny hand in hers and nodded. Sophie never treated Lily like a project. She didn't bring worksheets or flashcards arranged in tidy rows. She didn't ask Lily to perform or repeat words for approval. Instead, she moved through the world beside her with patience, quietness, and respect. She noticed what Lily noticed: the flicker of light on a glass of water, the hush that came when wind passed through the trees, the subtle way Lily began to sway when a song had the right rhythm. Slow, steady, safe. Their days became small rituals. In the mornings, soft music played while they matched cards, showing emotions, colors, and places. Sophie held one up, and Lily touched it if it fit her mood. Some days she tapped quiet or blue. Other days she didn't tap at all. That was fine. Evenings brought sunlight spilling across the floor. Lily moved her shoulders to the rhythm of Sophie's hums. It wasn't quite dancing, but it was connection. Ethan often stood in the hallway watching. He was still learning, still afraid of doing something wrong. Then came the grocery store. It was a Saturday afternoon. Ethan had offered to join to help, he'd said. Sophie smiled, touched by the effort. Lily didn't protest, which was progress. The store was busier than expected. Holiday music blared overhead, blending with beeps of scanners and metallic crashes of carts. At first, Lily stayed close to Sophie, gripping her hand with both of hers. Her blue dress peeked from under her coat, the same one she insisted on wearing despite the cold. Sophie had tied a lavender ribbon into her ponytail that morning, and it trembled with every movement. In aisle 4, a flashing holiday display lit up. Then the overhead speakers erupted at full volume, rocking around the Christmas tree. Lily froze. Her eyes widened. Then she gasped, a small broken sound before covering her ears. Her knees gave out, and a piercing cry tore through the air. People turned. A woman nearby muttered, "Oh dear." Ethan reacted instantly, voice sharp. "Lily, stop. It's okay. Stop crying." Sophie caught his arm, steady but firm. "Don't," she whispered. He stared at her. "She's never done this before." "She has," Sophie said softly. "Just not in front of you." Lily was curled on the tile, rocking back and forth, lost in panic. Sound, light, and motion collided until her world collapsed inward. "Do something," Ethan hissed. "I am." Sophie knelt beside Lily. She didn't touch her yet. She just sat near, letting Lily see her hands. No sudden movements. Then slowly, she began to hum the same low melody they used every evening by the window. "Sit," Sophie said quietly next to her, not over her. Ethan hesitated, then crouched. "She's not misbehaving," Sophie murmured. "Her brain is overwhelmed. We need to help her body feel safe. What do I do?" "Lower your voice. Match her breathing. Touch her back gently. Here, steady pressure." Ethan followed her lead. His hand trembled once, then steadied. At first, Lily didn't respond. Then she leaned into him. Her hands slipped from her ears. The screaming stopped. She pressed her forehead to his chest. His arms closed around her, instinctively protective. Sophie exhaled softly, staying close. When Lily finally lifted her head, eyes still wet, she looked at Sophie. "Home," she whispered. Sophie nodded. "Yes, love. Let's go home." They left the cart behind and stepped into the cold. Back at the car, Ethan buckled Lily into her seat with trembling care. She clutched her music box against her coat. Inside, exhausted but calm, Ethan shut the door and stood outside for a long moment. The winter air bit his face, but he didn't move. Finally, he turned to Sophie. His voice was quiet, almost breaking. "I had no idea." Sophie met his gaze, her tone gentle but steady. "You weren't supposed to. Not yet. You've been trying to make her fit into your world." He swallowed hard, looking back through the car window at his daughter, and she's asking me. Sophie finished for him softly to learn hers. Ethan Sterling was not a man who learned slowly. He had built a multi-million-dollar company from the ground up, negotiated in boardrooms with confidence and clarity. But parenting, real connected, mindful parenting, was something entirely different. He followed Sophie's lead now carefully. He learned to give Lily simple visual choices. Red shirt or blue shirt instead of get dressed. He paused longer, after asking a question, resisting the urge to repeat himself too soon. Sophie had taught him that Lily often needed more time to process, and he stopped saying, "Look at me when I talk to you." Instead, he knelt to her level, used calm tone and gentle presence. It wasn't about making Lily adapt. It was about him learning how to meet her where she was. The progress was slow, but undeniable. Lily reached for his hand more often. She started humming when he walked into the room. Quiet, tuneless notes. But Sophie said that was her way of marking safety. "She doesn't hum for just anyone," she'd said one morning over breakfast. "That's connection." Ethan had looked at his daughter, who was lining up crayons in perfect order. His heart had ached in the most unfamiliar, tender way. But as Lily opened up, Ethan began to notice something else. Sophie. It wasn't just her patience or her intuition. There was a heaviness to her sometimes, a quiet that clung to her shoulders when no one was watching. He had caught her standing by the living room window, once eyes glazed, lips moving slightly, like she was counting in her head. When she noticed him, she had smiled quickly and busied herself with Lily's flashcards. Ethan didn't press. Not yet. One night, Lily had fallen asleep early, after a full day, at the sensory playroom Sophie had helped design in the guest wing. Ethan walked past the nursery and heard faint music drifting from the library. He followed the sound. Inside, he found Sophie curled on the reading couch, a book unopened beside her. Her eyes were wet. Her phone lay on the armrest, softly playing a lullaby version of You Are My Sunshine. She didn't see him right away. She sang it tonight, Sophie whispered, sensing him eventually. Lily barely more than a whisper, but she sang along. Ethan stepped into the room. That's a first? Sophie nodded, wiping a tear with her sleeve. Yes, a big one. There was a long silence. Then she added almost too quietly to hear. My little sister used to sing that she had developmental delays too, but we didn't understand then. My parents said she'd grow out of it. They didn't listen to me. Ethan sat down beside her without speaking. She passed when she was 7. A seizure in the middle of the night. They said it might have been prevented if she'd had more medical support. Early intervention. I'm so sorry, he said quietly. I tried to do for Grace what I'm doing now for Lily. Sophie continued, voice trembling. But I was only a kid. I didn't know how. She paused, shaking her head. I think that's why I do this, she admitted. Not just as a job. I walk into these houses and see kids who are like her, but not her. And I keep hoping, maybe if I help enough of them, some part of her is still alive. Ethan's throat tightened. You're not just helping Lily, he said, his voice low. You're helping me too. He reached out and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. She didn't pull away. For a long moment they sat there, two people holding more grief than they had ever spoken aloud, linked now by a child in a blue dress and a lullaby that still echoed in both their memories. Outside, snow began to fall softly against the windows. Inside, something quieter was beginning to thaw. Sophie sat at the kitchen table, sketching on a notepad, while steam curled from her untouched tea. Lily was in the next room, quietly arranging felt snowflakes on the window. It was just a week before Christmas, and the Sterling estate was already draped in white lights and garlands that sparkled in the halls. But Lily hated it. She flinched at the blinking lights. She screamed when someone plugged in the automated Santa that danced and sang by the front door. And she'd hidden under the table when the cinnamon-scented diffuser kicked in that morning. Sophie had tried to explain to the staff, but festive tradition seemed to outweigh comprehension. So now, she was writing a new tradition. When Ethan stepped into the kitchen, Sophie looked up. I want to do something different, she said, tapping her notepad. For Christmas, he arched an eyebrow. Different how? A low-sensory Christmas, she replied. Lights on dimmers. No music with bells or chimes. No overpowering smells. Just neutral, calm things. Small tree. Fewer people. No surprises. Ethan folded his arms. That's not Christmas. That's a Tuesday with decorations. Sophie met his eyes, calm but firm. It would be Lily's Christmas. He didn't answer right away. I get that the world needs to adjust, he finally said. But it feels like I'm stripping everything away for the sake of making things easier. No, Sophie said softly. You're not making things easier. You're making things possible. She turned the notepad toward him. On it was a simple drawing of a tiny tree, a paper star, and 3 figures sitting on the floor beneath it. No crowd, no chaos, she said. Just peace, safety, joy on her terms. Later that night, Ethan noticed Lily cowering near the fireplace, her hands over her ears as the stereo played a playlist of holiday jingles. The music wasn't loud by normal standards, but to Lily, it was too much. Her whole body trembled. He knelt beside her, turned off the music, and whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart. We're turning it down." The next morning, the big tree in the foyer was quietly taken down and replaced with a 2-foot pine in Lily's playroom. It smelled only faintly of pine wood. Sophie helped Lily string handmade garlands of yarn and wooden beads. They hung soft yellow fairy lights that didn't blink. Lily hummed while she worked calm and focused. On Christmas Eve, Ethan hesitated outside the doorway to the playroom. He wore a cashmere sweater instead of a suit. In his hand was a box wrapped in brown paper with Lily's name scrawled in careful penmanship. Inside the room, Sophie and Lily sat cross-legged in front of the little tree. A soft instrumental version of Silent Night played. No vocals, no sharp transitions, just melody. Lily was holding the paper star they had made together earlier that week. She stood slowly on tiptoe as Sophie steadied her from behind. With quiet focus, Lily placed the star at the top of the tree. Then something extraordinary. She turned, looked at her father, and smiled. It was a small smile, almost a secret, but Ethan felt it like a thunderclap. He stepped in, his voice barely above a whisper. "Can I join you?" Lily nodded once and held out her hand. He took it. The three of them sat together on the carpet. No fanfare, no noise, only warmth. Ethan handed Lily the brown package. She opened it slowly. Inside was a soft blanket with her name embroidered in the corner. "Do you like it?" Ethan asked. Lily looked at Sophie, then at her father, and whispered, "Warm." Ethan's chest tightened. He nodded, "Yes, warm." That night, the Sterling mansion was quieter than it had ever been during the holidays, but for the first time, it truly felt like Christmas. The kitchen smelled faintly of vanilla and flour, with sunlight spilling in across the tiled floor. Ethan sat at the long counter sleeves rolled up, watching Lily carefully line up cookie cutters shaped like stars, trees, and moons. Sophie stood nearby, nodding with encouragement, but not interfering. On the table lay a laminated visual guide pictures showing each step of baking. Mix, roll, cut, bake, cool. It was Sophie's idea, and Lily had taken to it instantly. "Okay," Ethan said softly. "What's next?" Lily pointed at the third picture. The star-shaped cutter. "Star," she said. Ethan smiled. "Star it is." He let her press the cutter into the dough. She wriggled slightly with delight as the shape emerged clean and neat. Ethan resisted the urge to clap or talk too loudly. Instead, he offered a quiet thumbs up. Lily returned it, grinning. It was still surprising how much had changed in such a short time. He was learning. He no longer filled silence with instructions. He waited. He offered choices. He learned Lily's rhythm, her signals, her way of saying enough without speaking. Later that evening, the fireplace crackled low in the family room. Lily's play area was dimly lit with her favorite plush animals in a line across the carpet. Ethan sat cross-legged on the couch, a book in hand, as Sophie watched from the armchair. They had fallen into a rhythm too, Ethan and Sophie. They barely spoke about it, but their glances lingered longer now, their smiles softer. There was something unspoken taking root between them, tender and steady. "You are my sunshine," Ethan asked, Lily holding up the familiar storybook. She hesitated, then gave a small nod. Sophie reached over and dimmed the light further, the way Lily preferred. The world softened. Ethan read slowly, keeping his tone steady, calm. Lily inched closer on the carpet, hugging her soft blanket. The Christmas gift she now rarely let go of. When he turned the final page, Lily looked at him for a long moment. Then, without prompting, she climbed onto the couch. Ethan froze. Lily crawled into his lap, her legs curling beside him like she had always belonged there. She rested her head on his chest and whispered something so quietly. Ethan wasn't sure he heard it. "Daddy, no loud." He did not speak. He only wrapped his arms around her as gently as he could. The book slid from his lap and hit the floor with a soft thud. Sophie, sitting across from them, felt her throat tighten. Ethan leaned his cheek against Lily's golden hair, blinking rapidly. "I know, sweetheart," he whispered, barely holding his voice steady. "No loud. I hear you." Tears slipped down his cheeks. All this time, he'd tried to fix with appointments, specialist strategies. He'd spoken and spoken trying to reach her, but he had not truly heard her. Not like this. Sophie wiped her own eyes. She had seen many moments with children like Lily, but few as raw as this. Ethan, a man once consumed by control and logic, now sat in complete stillness, letting his daughter lead. It was not dramatic, not noisy, but it was everything. Later, after Lily had fallen asleep in his arms, Ethan carried her upstairs. Sophie followed quietly, turning off lights behind them. He laid Lily in bed, pulled the covers over her, then stood for a long time at the edge of the room, just watching her breathe. When he turned to leave, Sophie met him in the hallway. "She loves you," she said gently. "I know," he replied, voice husky. "I think she always did. I just never gave her the silence to say it." They stood there a moment longer, the soft night light casting a golden glow between them. No more words were needed. It started with something small. Mrs. Laney, a former housekeeper, stopped by the Sterling residence one rainy afternoon to drop off a Christmas card. She adored Lily, and when she saw the low, sensory Christmas setup, the soft gold lights, the paper tree, Lily smiling in her blue dress, she quietly recorded a short clip on her phone. She posted it online with the caption, "The sweetest Christmas I've ever seen." This little girl didn't need noise, just love. The video went viral overnight. At first, the comments were warm. Strangers moved by Lily's joy, by the quiet beauty of the room, by Sophie humming softly in the background as Lily spun beneath a string of paper stars. Then came the backlash. What kind of CEO hosts a Christmas like this? Is Ethan Sterling raising a porcelain doll? This man leads a billion-dollar company. Parenting blogs debated. Business headlines followed. Too soft to lead inside Ethan Sterling's private life. CEO Sterling's holiday sparks questions about his leadership. The board called an emergency meeting. Ethan sat at the head of the table, tie-loose eyes tired. Around him were cautious stares. "We know your daughter has special needs," one board member began carefully. "But this is affecting investor confidence. Your personal choices are blurring with the brand," added another. "The optics matter." "What optics?" Ethan asked, voice even. A third board member tapped a tablet. "This," he said, showing the viral clip. "It makes us look weak, sentimental, distracted. We're offering a solution." Another said, "There's a highly respected residential program. Lily would get full-time professional care, and your image would be restored." Ethan stood slowly. His voice came quiet, firm. "I built this company from a garage with 2 employees and a leaky roof. I gave up birthdays, weekends, my marriage, everything for this brand. And now you're telling me that because I gave my daughter a Christmas that didn't overwhelm her, I'm unfit to lead." Silence. "She's not a liability," Ethan continued. "She's a child. And if this company can't accept that she needs gentle lights and quiet music to feel safe, then maybe I don't need this company." He placed a paper on the table. "My resignation effective immediately." And he walked out. That night, Sophie found him on the back patio coat, open snow clinging to his shoulders. Lily was asleep upstairs, tucked beneath her weighted blanket, unaware of the storm unfolding downstairs. "You really left," Sophie said softly. "I had to." Ethan looked at her, eyes tired but clear. "She needs to know I'll choose her. Not just when no one's watching, but when everyone is. You did the right thing." She said, "I don't know what comes next," he admitted. "I've spent my life building a world based on image, and now I just want to be her dad." Sophie stepped forward. She reached for his hand. "You already are." Snow drifted quietly around them. Inside, the lights were soft, the air still. Lily slept peacefully, surrounded by the quiet love of a home made just for her. And for the first time in a long, long while, Ethan Sterling felt like he'd made something that truly mattered. New Year's Eve blanketed Boston in a soft hush. Snow fell in gentle spirals outside the window as Sophie stood quietly in the doorway of Lily's bedroom. The little girl lay curled beneath a blanket, cheeks flushed from the day's excitement. Her blue dress crumpled from play, one hand clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. Tomorrow, the nanny contract would end. Her suitcase was packed. No renewal papers, no promises. She had done what she came to do. She turned to leave. But as she reached the top of the staircase, Ethan was waiting. He stood at the bottom step, in a dark sweater, holding a scarf in one hand, saying nothing, only nodding once toward the back door. Outside, the garden glowed in soft golden lights. No flickers, no bright flashes, just a steady warmth. In the center stood a small Christmas tree, built from stacked books and wrapped with gentle string lights. It was something Lily and Sophie had created together on quiet afternoons. At the top of the tree was a glass snow globe. Inside it, a tiny girl twirling in a pink tutu. Ethan walked over, lifted the snow globe carefully, and handed it to Sophie. Lily says this is her favorite, he murmured, because it moves without making noise. Sophie smiled faintly, brushing a speck of snow from the glass. She wanted you to have it, Ethan added softly. She opened the globe. There was no ring inside, no grand gesture, just a small key tucked inside. Sophie's breath caught. It was the key to the music box, the one Lily carried everywhere. Ethan stepped closer. I used to think being a father meant teaching your child to adapt to the world, he said. But you taught me. It's about reshaping the world so she can live in it safely. His voice was low, steady. You didn't just change Lily, you changed me. And if I'm lucky enough, his gaze held hers warm and unguarded now. I'd like to keep building this life not alone. Sophie's eyes welled, her lips trembling. Ethan, he shook his head gently. You don't have to say anything tonight. Just know that the door is open. And in this house, if anything looks like a family, it has you in it. She stepped forward, quietly, slipping her hand into his. Not a kiss, not a declaration, just a hand held tightly in the cold, saying more than words ever could. From behind them, soft footsteps pattered across the deck. Lily barefoot, still in her blue dress, her curls tousled from sleep, she walked toward them. She said nothing, just extended both arms and placed one hand on Sophie's, the other on Ethan's. The three of them stood like that, wrapped in silence. Then without cue, Lily began to sway gently. Her small body moved with the rhythm of her own heartbeat, soft and slow. Sophie followed. Then Ethan together beneath the book tree and soft lights in the hush of the falling snow. They danced. No music, no instructions, just the three of them moving as one. No one said it aloud, but something had shifted. A family once broken by grief, once separated by fear, and misunderstanding had found a rhythm. It was imperfect. It was quiet, but it was theirs. And as snow continued to fall and the new year waited just beyond midnight, Ethan looked at Sophie, at Lily between them, and whispered, "Thank you for staying." They didn't need anything else. Not tonight. Only the warmth of hands held under winter stars and the promise of a home rebuilt, not through perfection, but through love that listens and love that learns. But the dance didn't end with the snow. 6 months later, under the soft glow of garden lights in spring, Ethan and Sophie stood together again, this time, not as employer and nanny, but as partners. There was no big noisy wedding. Instead, they exchanged vows in the quiet sanctuary of the garden Lily loved, surrounded by books and soft music. Lily, wearing a dress the color of morning sky, stood between them, holding the rings with a focus and pride that brought tears to everyone's eyes. Ethan opened his own architectural firm, one dedicated to designing sensory-friendly spaces for children like Lily. And Sophie, she finally opened the music therapy center she had dreamed of for her sister Grace. Every evening, the three of them still danced, sometimes in the kitchen, sometimes in the garden, moving to their own rhythm, a family built on the quietest, strongest kind of love. We've reached the end of this story, but I hope the feeling it gave you stays a little longer. Here we believe that every person has a story worth telling, and every heartbreak carries the seed of a new beginning. Thank you for spending your valuable time with us. It means the world to have you here. If you want to be part of our growing family, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. And tell me, Where in the world are you watching from? Today I read every single comment, and I can't wait to say hello to you. See you in the next video.